If anyone thinks this is only about us, this is only about Ukraine, they are fundamentally mistaken.
That was the voice of Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland on Tuesday, where he urged Western political and business leaders to give more military aid to his country or risk attacks from Russia.
Possible directions and even timeline of a new Russian aggression beyond Ukraine become more and more obvious. Let me ask very honestly, which European nation today can provide a combat-ready army on par with ours, holding back Russia? And if one must fight against Putin together in the years ahead, isn't it better to put an end to him and his war strategy now, while our brave men and women are already doing it? They are the world's chance. Putin must regret. We need him to lose. We need to finally dispel the notion that global unity is weaker than one man's hatred. And we can do it.
Kiev had made a request to meet with the representatives of the People's Republic of China on the sidelines at the World Economic Forum. That's according to a report in Politico on Wednesday. According to that report, Beijing rejected the request. According to Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry, what Kiev called a peace conference, a meeting held on the sidelines of the WEF, among Ukraine's various allies, including the U.S., but not including Russia, apart from it being a family photograph of participants and an agreement on yet another meeting, turned out to be a failure for Kiev and its Western partners. The intent was to attempt to reach a peace settlement without Russia. For more on all of that, we go to Moscow to speak with Mark Sleboda, analyst and commentator. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me. At least in the Western media sphere, I think probably dominating the headlines in the last few days has been this peace deal, peace negotiations being arranged by the U.S. on the sidelines of Davos. God knows they don't want to talk about what's actually happening on the battlefield right now. So that is definitely not dominating media headlines. Now, what is being billed as a peace deal or peace negotiations is pretty much exactly the opposite, because it's first of all, obviously it's one-sided. Russia is not invited to these things. Second of all, what is being pushed is what is called Zelensky's 10-point peace formula, which is actually the antithesis of peace formula. It is a demand by the losing side in this conflict that Russia unconditionally surrender, right? That they withdraw all their troops from Ukrainian territory to the 1991 borders, that they surrender the people of the Donbass and the Crimea to the tender mercies of their Azov neo-Nazi battalions and sundry, that Russian leaders all be sent to war crimes trials, that Russia pays reparations to Ukraine, and I think Zelensky wants a pretty little pink pony with a ribbon in its hair, right? I mean, this is their fantasy. This is what's being pushed, and on one hand, yeah, it's PR, right? We know there can be no peace negotiations because Zelensky himself dictated a law, right, that forbidding himself or any other Ukrainian official from negotiating with the Russian leadership.
Right.
Right. I mean, so of course, right. No one is interested in peace. No one on either side is interested in peace. You know, that has to be said. Russia's winning. They're not interested in some type of ceasefire or peace deal on Western terms or anything like that. Russia has always said, yeah, we're willing to talk, and we're willing to consider peace as long as the terms of the stated goals of our special military operation, of our intervention in the Ukrainian civil conflict, are met. If we can achieve those goals peacefully, fine. But if you're not willing to meet those goals, then we can just talk. But it's not going to amount to anything.
On that question, just let me interrupt for 1 second. On that question, the NATO membership was a big part of the underpinning of this thing that hasn't happened, and Russia not saying that cannot happen. But it seems like they've been trying to do an end run over the last week or so, doing sort of just bilateral NATO type agreements, mutual defense pact, like between Ukraine and UK, for example.
Okay, so these aren't technically mutual defense pacts, right? These are defense cooperation agreements. They're being billed as security guarantees. They're kind of a consolation prize for not officially being brought into NATO. But of course, Russia's demand was also that Ukraine can't de facto be a part of NATO, right? Which is what they're doing, right? They're turning Ukraine into a battle platform against Russia, like they want to do with Taiwan against China, right? Russia, it's not just literal NATO membership, but these deals are mostly just PR. Basically, it's a consolation prize for PR reasons. It's what we are already doing for Ukraine, i.e. intelligence, providing you with training, your troops with training, providing you with military aid and structural military reform, blah, blah, blah. We promise to do in the future as well. That's it. Right? It doesn't commit British troops, and countries are lining up. Every country in the West is going to sign one of these things with Ukraine, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. In fact, if anything, it commits Russia to seeing this through to the end, to regime change in Kiev more than anything else. But that is parallel, with these peace negotiation, quote unquote, talks. What they really are is an opportunity for the target is the global South, right? The leaders of the global South, or the rest of the world with a capital R outside the West, are brought together, corralled by the U.S. and forced to listen to Zelensky's spiel. And this is actually the fourth of these format meetings, right? This is not the first. This is actually the fourth one. They were started in August. There was one in Denmark, in Malta, a secret, not so secret one just recently in Saudi Arabia, and now this one in Davos. And the reason why it was held on the sidelines of Davos is that global leaders from the global South, they just stopped coming. Right? They're not showing up. They're like, we've heard it all before. We're not interested. We're not buying what you're selling. We're not interested in the signing on to sanctions against Russia. We're not politically taking your side, whatever. Like, for instance, in the last one, China, Brazil, the UAE didn't even bother to show up. And spoiler, the idea was if you hold it on the sidelines of Davos, the world leaders are already there, and they have less of an excuse and wiggle room to not show up. Spoiler, China still didn't show up. The idea to browbeat these countries into submission has failed. And Blinken thought when he arranged these meetings that Russian military would be shattered by the Great Offensive, and all that would be left would be how to divide up Russia into parts. And that was the reason for arranging these type of format meetings, but at least according to Seymour Hersh, and that seems credible. But obviously the exact opposite happened, and even Bloomberg has admitted, there's no way forward for these meetings. They're not going to amount to nothing. The global South isn't interested. For one hand, they see what you're doing in Israel, and they're even less interested than they were before. It comes down to a PR move at this point. That's all it is, because they're not getting any traction with the global South, with the rest of the world.
All right. We'll speak again next week. I really appreciate your time and expertise, bud.
Thanks for having me.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.